Hi everybody. Today we're going to do a lesson on the Das Mahavidya. So there are a lot of texts that have reference to these Devis. The main ones are the Narada Patratra, and the Devi Puran and Bhagavad Puran. So to start this off, we'll start at the origin of the Das Mahavidya. And as most of you already know, the Das Mahavidya stands for 10 goddesses of wisdom. And these 10 Devis are all forms of Kali or Shakti. And to begin with Kali, we have to start with Sati. So Sati was born to Daksha. And as you know, Daksha, he's one of the sons of Brahma. And he's sort of like the father of creation, so to speak. And Daksha did severe tapasya to Mahadevi, and she appeared before him. When asked what boon does he want, Daksha said that he wants Mahadevi to be born as his daughter. So Mahadevi granted him that boon and said that she'll descend to be the wife of Shiva. And she will actually take birth from Prasuti, which was Daksha's wife. But she also made sure that she told him that once his merits end, or if he disregards her, she'll leave him instantly. So there was a little bit of a stipulation there. So Daksha's famous yagya, where he had invited all the gods except for Lord Shiva, we all know that story, so I'll just briefly go over that. Basically what happened was Sati was upset, and she was already married to Shiva, and she was upset that they weren't invited. And so she wanted to go, and upon arriving there, her dad was really disrespectful and just kind of blew her off, acted like she wasn't even there. And so she was so upset that she went into like a great tapasya and ended up she jumped into the fire, so to speak, but she actually went into a severe tapasya and made herself into the elements, so to speak. But we won't go too much into detail about that yagya, because I'm sure that everybody watching this knows all about that. So on the other hand, when Lord Shiva saw that Sati was adamant about going to her father's yajna, in spite of his disapproval because they weren't formally invited, he did get a little bit upset and reprimanded her by saying that, I know that you're not bound to my orders, so you can do as you like, And why are you waiting for my consent? So you know, when Sati heard like Shiva talk like this, she kind of thought like Shiva was taking her for granted, so to speak. You know, he had got to obtain her as his wife, and he forgot her real form, you know, which was the, you know, the divine Shakti. So she said, well, let me leave him for a minute. And stay in my own Leela for some time. And so while she was doing this, she became the fearful form of Mahakali. And, you know, everybody knows Kali, or else you probably wouldn't be watching this video. But, you know, I mean, this was Kali. You know, Kali can be depicted in two ways. She can be depicted as very motherly, as well as very fearful. You know, very like terrible. And so when Sati took this form, the first form of Kali, she was dark and she was without clothes. She had her tongue out with the teeth. So kind of like, you know, when you stick your tongue out but you have your teeth too. She had disheveled hair and she was wearing a garland of slain heads. So when Shiva saw her like this, in this, you know, terrible form, he tried to leave right away. I mean, he didn't understand at that moment. So when Shakti saw, or Kali saw Shiva like this, I mean, she had mercy on him still, but she wanted to block all the 10 directions so Shiva could not get through any of them. So whenever Shiva tried to go, you know, to this direction, he was formed with all these other goddesses, these other forms of Kali. And Kali herself. Mahakali was right in front of him. And Shiva finally said, "Who are you? You're dark complexions. Where's my beloved Sati?" And Kali just was laughing at him. But even though she was in this terrible form, she still had mercy because it's her husband. And she said, "Well, can't you recognize me? I'm your own Sati." And so, because she had, you know, mercy on Shiva, she started to explain these forms, and she went back to being fair complexioned or Gauri, when she started to explain these directions. So this is how it goes. So the goddess who is in front is Kali, or like in the sky direction. And also towards in the sky direction. So Tara and Kali kind of stand like close. So in the sky direction is Tara. On the right side is Chinnamasta. On the left side is Bhuvaneshwari. Behind you is Bagalamukhi. The southeast corner is Dhumavati. The southwest corner is Kamala. The northwest corner is Matangi. And the northeast corner is Shodashi, or Tripuri Sundari. And in your own self, she said, I'm existing as Bharavi. So that's kind of like the first beginning of like how this all started. And these Devis or goddesses are tantric. A lot of tantric practitioners use these yantras and mantras to, get siddhis and, get divine moksha, and just overall enlightenment. So we've already talked about Kali. And so next is Tara. And so, like I said before, these are going to come from the Devi Bhagavatam or Narada Pancharatara, or I'm sorry, Panchratra. And so it's said that Tara, on the west side of the Meru, there's a lake called Cholana. And from this lake came Tara. And on the banks of this lake, the goddess did japa for 3 yagyas. And beams of light fell on the lake from her higher face. And that's how she obtained that blue color. Tara is often depicted as being blue in color, but there's more to that, and we'll get into that. So Tara is also known as to be kind of like a motherly figure to Shiva. So on the urging of the gods, Vishnu, Shiva drinks the destructive poison that came during the churning of the milk. When they did the churning of the milk for the ambrosia, for the nectar of life and immortality. So that night Shiva had drank the poison to save the world. And we often recognize this during the Shivaratri, the night of Shiva. So he drinks it all up, and then his throat starts to turn blue. And then, because this is poison, and he ends up falling ill, and Tara finds him and revives him and nurses him back to health. And she counteracts the poison. So, and also in Hinduism, milk it means divine knowledge, food for the soul, so to speak. Not only milk, but it means divine knowledge. And, you can often see Tara with scissors. That means that she can cut all the attachments in life. And next we'll move to Shodashi, or Tripuri Sundari. Once the Apsaras from heaven went to see Shiva in Kailasa, and Lord Shiva in front of them called Sati by taking the name Kali. And so Sati felt ashamed and offended and decided she'll get rid of her Kali Swarupa and will change it to Gauri Swarupa, which means that she wanted to be fair complexioned. And so with this, she disappeared from Kailasa. And so Shiva was all by himself, and during the days, Sage Narada visited Kailasa, and he asked Shiva about Sati, and Shiva said that she left him and disappeared somewhere. And Narada meditated and found out that Devi was doing tapasya on the Sumeru mountains. And so he went there and was trying to appease Sati. So Sati ended up getting pleased by these words. And then he started to ask about Shiva. And he said that, Shiva was going to get geared up to get married again. So he wanted her to come over and stop that marriage. And so Sati returned to Kailasa, and she took on a really beautiful appearance that was not even known in the three worlds. And when she came close to Shiva, she found her own image in his heart. But thinking that image was of someone else, she started to accuse Shiva and reprimand him and call him ungrateful and a breaker of vows and all kinds of stuff. And she was just thinking that he didn't love her and he loved somebody else. And she started to say a whole bunch of stuff that she normally wouldn't say, because she was jealous and just filled with rage at that moment. And then Shiva told her, meditate and see with your inner eyes your jnana drishti. And you'll see that that shadow or that image in my heart is you only. And so Sati calmed down and looked, and she looked really close into Shiva's heart, and he was right, and she saw herself. And so when Sati was asked about the mystery of the chaya in her heart, which means shadow, Shiva said that since you have assumed the most beautiful appearance in the three worlds, you'll be known as Sundari or Tripur Sundari. And since you're always 16 years old, you're the famous Shodashi. And so that's how this goddess, this is a little bit of a background on this goddess. And next we'll move to Bhuvaneshwari. Bhuvaneshwari is like the Devi Maya. She is unmanifested energy and power. That's exactly what she was before she had an earthly appearance. So while Shodashi was here, the sun appeared in the sky under her to watch the rishis and offer sacrifices to the sun. And Bhuvaneshwari became a manifest goddess and ruled over the three worlds. The earth, the physical plane, and the atmosphere, or the heavens or celestial plane. And since she's the ruler of Bhu, she became Bhuvaneshwari. That's how she got her name. And it's no other than, it's also Shodashi herself. And she's the controller of the 5 elements. And she's the controller of all the mental elements as well. And next, we'll move to Bharavi. And Bharavi is the terrible one of the cremation ground. She has a power who's irresistible and unavoidable, and is in a continuous process in this world and the phenomenal world as well. Bharavi is in charge of the Nityalaya, or dissolution, which means like decay or death on a daily basis. And Bharavi, it literally means terror. She's the destructive force. She's red colored. She's the goddess of the great shining that equals 1,000 red suns. Her favorite color is red. She holds a book and a rosary in 2 hands, and the other 2 hands dispense protection and boons. And she wears a garland of severed heads, a moon on her own head, and lots of jewels. And she has 3 lotus eyes. And she has 10 hands, and she carries weapons, like a bow and arrow, a noose, a goad, sword and club, a drum, a trident, and the book and the rosary. And she is often depicted as sitting on a dead body. She also holds a pot of ambrosia. There was one time when Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are worshipped. She's there with them, accepting the worship. She's the other half of Shiva. So, sometimes when we have Shiva in that form where he's Shiva and Shakti, well, that's Bharavi. She is the Kundalini, Gauri, Saraswati, Narayani. She confers blessings to her devotees. And she's the giver of perfections. She's the giver of awakened consciousness. She's the giver of pleasure. And she's the dispeller of fears and the giver of food. And she's also the creator and preserver. And next we'll go to Matangi. In ancient times, in a garden of flowers that filled with various trees, Matanga Muni did tapasya for obtaining full control over all beings for hundreds of years. As a result of that penance, Sundari's eyes emitted light energy. That form assumed a dark complexion, and it became the dark-colored Raja Matangi. And so here's the background of, some more background of Matangi. So one day, Sati went to Shiva to obtain permission to go to her father's house. And Shiva wanted to go with her, but wouldn't go unless he was invited. And Sati laughed and said, you should come with me. And Shiva said that I'm not going to go unless I was invited, but I'll escort you back. And so, but when she left, Shiva missed her and decided that he would visit in the disguise of an ornament vendor. And so when she saw him, she asked him, how much is this jewelry? And Shiva told her that if she fulfilled his desire, he would give her the ornaments. And Parvati, or Sati, was like shocked that somebody dare ask such a thing to her. And then she realized with her, divine siddhis, that vendor was Shiva. So she wanted to play along with it. And so she told Shiva that she would fulfill all his desires, but not right now. And she sent him away. And so later that evening, she went with a friend to where Shiva was praying. And she took the form of a beautiful outcast girl, a Chandali, and approached him thinking that he would not recognize her. But seeing her, Shiva also with his siddhi knew it was her. And he said, "Hey, beautiful girl, who are you and why have you come here?" And Parvati, as Chandali, said, I'm a Chandali and I'm here to do tapasya, to become a goddess, so don't disturb me. And then Shiva said, I'm Shiva and I'll give you the fruit of tapasya. If you marry me, I'll make you like Parvati without a doubt. And so, I mean, Sati kind of knew that Shiva probably saw through her disguise and bowed to him. And she said, "Oh, Deva, nobody can hide anything from you." And, you know, they were kind of happy that they were playing and, they loved each other. And Shiva said, you took this form because you wanted to pray to me. So now I give you the name Matangi. And Matangi is a measurement of all the limbs of creation and supreme goddess of all desires. So he said, anyone who prays to Matangi will attain perfection. And this is a really important Devi, just because, all the backstory behind it, and, there was a lot of effort, both by Shiva and Shakti, for this form of the Devi. And, Sati had basically laid open her lowness and submissiveness. And, she begged Shiva to accept her in his heart as the Chandalini, the Ukishta Chandalini. And Ukishta means rejected, but it was once used as a commodity. Not just rejected, it was once used as something, but it's rejected now. Like the remnants of food in the mouth after eating, or like seeds that you spit out of the mouth, or the food that stays on your hands when you eat. Crumbs that are left over from the food. And this is just another part of the divine grace of Parvati. And Shiva also goes along with this, and he makes himself, beg for forgiveness or acceptance. And Shiva also gives the name Matangi, a woman from the degraded mountain tribe or hunter-gatherers who became Sudras from neglecting all prescribed rites. I mean, Parvati and Shiva, in their role as Chandala and Chandalini, they basically made themselves low castes, and like people that were like less worth than dogs, so to speak, to other people. Not that they were really worth that, but other people thought of them as worthless. They basically moved out of their orbit and entered into the world of the loneliness, the least, and the last, and the refuse of society. In the Varna system, the Brahmins originate from the mouth of the Lord. In the Kshatriyas, the hands. The Vaisyas, the thighs. And the Shudras, the feet. And so Shiva makes conscious contact with polluting things, such as corpses, crematoriums, and that sort of thing. I mean, in this act where Parvati went to be Matangi, they consciously entered into like union, and while Parvati was this Chandala girl, and she may have even been a different race also. And so when Shiva is sleeping with her, so to speak, he morphs into a Chandala. And this transformation speaks of the spiritual experience. Also with this story, there was a time where Parvati invited her sister-in-law Koribai to her house. And Kori refused to visit Parvati and said that she disliked her brother-in-law's bad habit of visiting cremation grounds and associating with ghosts and smearing himself with ash. She remembered how Shiva leaving the crematorium, ash and dust and grime, and their newly cleaned floors before his marriage to Parvati. And so when Parvati heard this complaining about her husband, she laid a curse on Koribai that she'd be born in the Dalit community in Varanasi, and she'd live in the midst of dirt, grime, and garbage. And the reborn Kari, knowing her curse, went to Shiva and received a boon that pilgrims to Varanasi would stop and pay their homage to her at the shrine near the dump before the pilgrimage is considered complete. And that is Matangi, the pollution-loving goddess. And there's also another story in regards to Matangi. Vishnu and Lakshmi went to visit Shiva and Parvati, and they brought some food. And they were all eating, and some of the food had fell on the floor. And there was a young girl with very auspicious and beautiful qualities in her heart. And she begged to eat the leftover food, or the uchista. And these divine couples ended up giving her the leftovers as prasad. And prasad usually means boiled rice, or food eaten by a deity. And so Shiva addressed her and said, "Whoever worships you with your mantra, their prayers and activities will bear fruits, and they'll get what they want and defeat their enemies." And that is the origin of Uchista Matangi. And next, we'll move along to, we'll go to the next Devi, and that's Dhumavati. Now, a lot of people get this Devi mixed up with a few other Devis. A lot of people associate Dhumavati with Alakshmi or Jeshta. These are totally different. Jeshta is not even a goddess. She's one of the daughters of Daksha. And Alakshmi is a goddess of misfortune. Dhumavati, on the other hand, is like a goddess of death. So they're totally different. It would be like, saying, Batman is the same as Superman, just because they can both fly. I mean, yes, both of these goddesses are dealing with, some of the more terrifying or more inauspicious types of elements of life, but that doesn't mean that they're the same. They're totally different. Dhumavati is, she is a goddess who, she likes, things to be, she prefers to be with people who are recluse or people who are by themselves, like single, people who are poor, people who are downtrodden. She prefers that, but she doesn't like give you bad luck, like, whereas Alakshmi is the sister of Lakshmi, and she has to be there in order to know what Lakshmi is. You have to know what Alakshmi is. In order to know what Alakshmi is, you have to know what Lakshmi is. So she is like the yin and the yang of Lakshmi and Alakshmi. They're completely different goddesses. So I wanted to make that clear before we get into the background story of Dhumavati. Dhumavati, she can be related with Niriti. They are kind of similar, whereas, there's not a lot written about Dhumavati, but there is a lot written about Niriti. So, and they do have very similar qualities. But what is written about Dhumavati is that Sati was terribly enraged and in the mood to destroy everything. And so she threw herself into the fire pit at Daksha's famous yagya, which was like what I said at the beginning of this lesson. And so consequently, a lot of smoke came out of that fire pit. And out of that, the goddess Dhumavati appeared, who is the destroyer of all enemies. And then some more background about Dhumavati is, once in Kailasa, Sati told Shiva that she was hungry and give me something to eat. And Shiva had asked her to wait for some time because he was doing tapasya and he was in meditation. So after, some moments elapsed, she asked him again for some food, and he said, just wait a little bit more. And so Sati started getting impatient. And you know how it is when you're hungry, it's like, so she started, getting impulsive and, getting a little bit agitated and impatient. And so she said, hey Shiva, you are the God of the universe. Give me something to eat. I can't tolerate any more delay. And she ended up eating Shiva. And like within the very moment she did that, her body began to give off a lot of smoke. And Shiva ended up taking another body form of himself. And he said, Sati, see with your inner eye. There isn't any other man but me in the whole world, and neither a female except you. And today you devoured your own husband, and thus you've become a widow. So my devoted wife, abandon all the signs of a married woman, and you in this supreme murti will be famous as Bagalamukhi, and since your body was enwrapped with smoke, Dhumavati. So it's kind of, Dhumavati and Bagalamukhi are kind of like one and the same in this aspect. Because Dhumavati is like smoke, you know, but Bagalamukhi is, you know, she was actually a murti, you know, like she's physically here, like you could touch it. But all of these goddesses are the same, but they can be expanded into 10 forms. So that's another way to look at it too. And next we will go to Chinnamasta. And so this story is kind of similar to the one just told. One day Parvati went with her two Sakis, Dakini and Varani. That means like her two like maidens, like to help her and be with her. And they went to go take a bath in a lake or a river. And these two Sakis, they got hungry and started asking Sati for food. And so Sati was like, okay, wait some time. Kind of like what Shiva had done with Dhumavati's form. And so they waited, and then they started getting a little bit impatient. And they said, give us some food. And they said the same thing, you're the mother of the whole world. And when a child asks from his mother or her mother, they have to give. And that's why we're asking you for something to eat. And so Sati said, well, I'll give you some food when we get home. And so these two Sakis, they were afflicted so bad with hunger, and they said, please, come on, you are the mother of the world, give us some food. And so when Devi heard these words, and of course she had already lived in the form of Dhumavati, she just laughed and smiled, and then took her little finger and severed her own neck and cut off her head with the tips of her nails of her left hand. And the severed head fell into Sati's left hand, and out of the severed head 3 streams of blood gushed out, and one stream went to Dakini, and the other stream went to Varani, and the other stream went for herself. And Devi drank from the middle stream. And after all this happened, everybody returned home. And since Devi's head was severed, she became known as Chinnamasta. And, you know, this is a really beautiful story about sacrifice. I mean, you know, like she already knew, you know, what could happen, you know, if she kept saying no, and, you know, and even though it's good to, not be attached and not give in to your urges, the Devi Sati was so like generous and so self-sacrificing. Just so, there wouldn't be another situation where anybody had to go without. So it's just another beautiful aspect of the Devi. And next we'll move to Bagalamukhi. There was a time when Vishnu was worrying about a powerful wind that would destroy the whole world. And he began to do severe tapasya to discover any type of remedy to get this wind under control. And so with Vishnu's severe penance for like 1,000 years, Mahatripuri Sundari Devi stopped that wind flow. Thereafter, the great goddess saw a big lake called Haridra and started playing in it. After that, a resplendent goddess emerged from that yellow lake at midnight on a Krishna Paksha in Chaturshi, the 14th day of the dark phase of the moon. And that day was a Tuesday. In the Tantra text, this great night is known by the name of Viraratri. And this is how Bagalamukhi came. And it's also said that there were some demons or asuras, who were, like really bad. And like Bagalamukhi was able to like stun these groups of asuras and basically make it so they couldn't do any more damage. And she would like stun them, like freeze them. You know how when like you hypnotize people or you freeze them? She was able to do this, and they couldn't talk, they couldn't move, they couldn't do anything. That's how much power and control she had. And Bagalamukhi loves yellow. And next we'll move to Kamala. And Kamala is like the tantric form of Lakshmi. But they are different goddesses. They're not the same goddess. In ancient times, Brahma did severe penance in regards to for the purpose of creation. And Tara was pleased with the penance and appeared that day on a Shitra Shukla Navami. And I mean, she appeared at the churning of the ocean also. and she comes, so she also is Rama, and she's one who sits on the lotus throne and is situated in the heart of Vishnu. In the Bhadrapada month of the Krishna Ashtami Tithi, her Matangi form appeared, who is known as the destroyer of Kula Asura, or all the Asuras. In the Falguni month, Tuesday or Friday, she's the giver of all fortunes. And Mahalakshmi was born. And so this backstory also behind Kamala is that one day Indra saw Rambha, and he was infatuated with her beauty. And at the time, there was a fierce rishi, Durvasa, who appeared and gave a garland to Indra. And Indra was still like mesmerized by Rambha, and he didn't realize what he was doing, and he gave the garland to his elephant instead. And so Durvasa was really upset at the disrespect shown to him, and he cursed Indra and said, "You're the king of the gods, but you're sitting here playing with all these women." And he said, "You're going to lose Lakshmi. She'll leave your kingdom." And so Goddess Lakshmi was true to the curse and left the heavenly regions. So all the gods were upset, of course. I mean, just no money, no luxury. And, because of what Indra did. And they went to Vishnu to get some counsel. And Vishnu said that Lakshmi would appear if they churned the ocean of milk. So we're going back to the beginning again. And a lot of times in Hinduism, you do go in a circle. It's like a what's that symbol? The infinity. So you go in that infinity, and you go back, and you go up, and then you're back again. But the stories are always different. It's just an infinity. It's so beautiful. But anyhow, Vishnu suggested that Lakshmi would come if they churned the ocean of milk. And so everybody knows the story of the Devas and the Asuras. They went to go churn the ocean of milk. The Kashira Samudra. That means the churning of milk. They used the Mount Mandara as the central axis, and they used Vasuki, the serpent, as the rope to move the mountain. And Vishnu took the form of a large turtle to support the mountain. And the Asuras and Devas each took opposite ends of the snake and churned the ocean. And as they churned, a lot of beautiful beings and objects manifested, including the Chara Sarva, the divine horse, the Dhanavatara, the god of medicine, and the Sudharsana chakra, and the Parijata flower. And then came Lakshmi. And when they saw Lakshmi, everybody offered his or her asan with the greatest respect. And they did abhishek to her and offered her a lotus garland. And they begged her to stay with them. And she agreed. And she became known as Tripuri Sundari. And Tripuri means three, Pura means the city, and Sundari means beautiful. And so sometimes Lakshmi is called Tripuri Sundari, even though they are different goddesses. So that was a background of these Devis. And I also wanted to include in there the planets that go with the Devi. And so Kali is affiliated with Saturn. Tara is affiliated with Jupiter or Guru. Tripuri Sundari or Shodashi is associated with Mercury or Buddha. Matangi is affiliated with the sun or Surya. Bhuvaneshwari is associated with the moon or Chandra. Dhumavati is associated with Ketu. Chinnamasta is associated with Rahu. Bagalamukhi is associated with Mongol or Mars. And Kamala is associated with Venus or Shukra. And Bharavi, she's associated with the Lagna itself. So Bharavi is a really lucky one because, you know, you can include her like every day of your worship, you know, and because she like takes the place of the Lagna yourself, like your position when you were born. She takes the ascendant position. So yeah. Well, thank you all so much for coming and listening to me today, and I hope you have a great night.